All right. For those who are joining us, my name is Peter McLeod. I'm the chair of the assembly. I want to make sure the audio is coming through all right. And for everyone else who's been here for a few minutes, you're going to start thinking that I'm speaking on loop or something because I just keep saying the same thing. But I want everyone to feel very much welcome and appreciated for deciding to put a part of your night on hold in order to assist the members of the Citizens Assembly in their early work to think about the future of these two great communities. As we are now at a minute past the hour, I am going to properly get started. And everyone should be able to see a blue screen that says welcome. If you have chosen not to put your video on, that is A-OK. I would just ask that in 20 or 25 minutes when we move to a breakout discussion, if at all possible, you're able to come on screen. It'll make it easier to have a small group discussion with other folks who've joined us here tonight. So let me just make sure, a big wave from everybody whose screen is active. Hello, everyone. Hello, Saanich. Hello, Victoria. Hello, members of the Citizens Assembly. And hello, Saanich and Victoria residents. For our last time, my name is Peter McLeod. I'm the chair of this process, and it's my job to make sure that we have a good meeting tonight and to see that everybody gets the information that they've been coming to learn, but also has an opportunity to share the information that they've come to provide. We've organized tonight's public meeting, the first of two sets of public meetings in this 8-month process. Pretty early on in our process, we've only had 3 meetings so far because we think it's really important to hear directly from members of both communities. Part of me is curious to know whether some of our guests tonight, the residents, might have volunteered to serve on the Citizens Assembly, but unfortunately, we're not amongst those who are randomly selected. So this is the next best opportunity, I guess, to interact with us, and we hope that you will continue to stay involved with our work as it continues. As we get started, of course, while we're talking about the communities of Victoria and Saanich, it's important to acknowledge those communities from time immemorial that precede the current municipal history. I want to, of course, acknowledge the traditional territories of the Lekwungen peoples represented by the Songhees and the Sepsum, by the Wasanic peoples, the Sarlip and the Pequotchin, the Swalut and the Sekum, as well as the Malahat nations. They're the ones who have given such life and vitality to these lands and waters in what is now known as Victoria and Saanich. And I think it's important that, of course, everyone be conscious of the fact that while we're talking about municipal governance, we all have deeper responsibilities and obligations to one another's as members of a community that goes well beyond these corporate entities. It's about how we choose to live in relation to one another, to these lands and to these waters. Over the course of the next 2 hours, I want to talk a little bit about the role of the Citizens Assembly. I imagine a number of you are coming with questions about what the Assembly is, what its work entails, and perhaps critically, what happens if it makes a recommendation for change. I'm going to cover all of that off. I also want to talk about the role of the public roundtable meeting itself and what you can expect tonight. We're going to talk a little bit about other ways you're able to contribute to the Assembly through our public submissions process and our next set of meetings in February. But most importantly, and what we're saving the bulk of our time for tonight, 5 questions that we want to ask of you. And in order to hear as much as possible from all of you, we will be moving into smaller breakout discussions. In each of those breakout discussions, there will be members of the Assembly, as well as a member of my team. They'll have those 5 questions ready to go. They will record all of the comments you have to make. They're not going to be attributing them to you, so it's not going to have your name, phone number, social insurance number, none of that. None of that. It's just the comments that you're going to make will be captured. We're going to share those at the next meeting, which will be a week Saturday, the fourth meeting of the Citizens Assembly, and that'll be a very valuable part of our next conversations. When your small group discussion is over tonight, well, then you're done. We're not going to be coming back into a group like this. So if your small discussion takes 20 minutes, great. If it takes 45 minutes, great. We will be here as long as you've got something to say. So with that, I also want to point out that we have a Q&A panel, which you can click on. And if you find a way to navigate your way through on the Zoom control bar, you're going to see something that says more. It's going to say Q&A, and you can click that. A little panel will pop up. I'm going to take a very few clarifying questions really about the process before we move into those small group discussions. And so that's the best way to interact with me during this portion. All right. What is a Citizens Assembly? Well, I'm happy to report that it's something many of you will have voted for, because the Citizens Assembly only exists because in a public opinion question conducted by both municipalities, a majority of residents agreed that a Citizens Assembly would be a good way to give full hearing to the question of amalgamation. And then the pandemic happened, throwing a lot of grit in everyone's gears, which delayed the creation of the Assembly until last spring, when we sent out letters to both communities asking if people would be prepared to volunteer. The first meetings of the Assembly took place in September. But how is an Assembly work, and how is it different than a legislative process, a council process? The idea is this: much like a jury, you bring together a group of randomly selected citizens, but who are, in this case, demographically representative of their community. You give them the opportunity to hear from as many sides as possible and have the benefit of good information. To that end, we have commissioned MNP, an accountant and consultancy, to conduct a technical evaluation of both municipalities. They'll be bringing forward their report early in the new year. I'll say more about that later. So that's just one part of the information base the members have to draw on. But here's the thing that's different. At the end of the day, the members don't just get to vote with 50% plus one deciding the question. The members are tasked with trying to find consensus on this issue and to create a consensus report. That report will be tabled no later than June in 2025 and delivered to both councils. So please bear in mind tonight that the members are volunteers. They have volunteered to give 8 Saturdays of their time, plus evenings like this one, plus many more hours doing some of their own thinking and research and talking to folks in the community. I want to begin tonight by recognizing those members, thanking them for their public service, and inviting them now to give a wave so that you can see who they are. Here's what the Assembly is tasked with doing. None of them are municipal affairs experts. They have lived in the community their entire lives. Sometimes they've arrived in just the last couple of years. They have to learn about local governance, the services. They have to consider the preferences of residents like yourselves. They have to understand all of the implications of greater service integration, bunch of different options, and ultimately it falls to them to speak with one voice and recommend a course of action. These public meetings taking place in November and February at 2 points in our process are a chance for the wider public to interact with and meet members of the Assembly. It's your chance to share your thoughts and views and concerns about the prospect of deeper integration or amalgamation, and critically, because our curriculum can't cover off all the bases, we can't hear from everyone during our 8 sessions, it's a chance for you to bring perspectives that may not have occurred to them. I mentioned a moment ago that the Assembly exists because it was voted for. This is the question that was put forward to examine the costs, benefits, and disadvantages of amalgamation. Now, both councils have amended the terms of reference to not only look at amalgamation, but also this question of service integration. As everyone is aware, a number of services in both communities are provided by the Capital Regional District. It is an entity that provides various levels of services to communities throughout the Greater Victoria area. Municipalities often also create bilateral relationships in order to provide services that are administered by one jurisdiction in others. So really the question is a question of degree, a question from maintaining the status quo of 2 separate municipalities, to considering opportunities for greater service integration, to outright amalgamation, which means the dissolution of both municipal corporations and the creation of a new one. I said that in the spring, we sent out letters throughout the community. 10,000 randomly selected households received an invitation to serve. We had 305 people volunteer to spend as much time as our members are, and 48 of them were randomly selected, again, to match the demographics and geography of the community. 27 from Saanich. Yes, we have to remember they're a little bit bigger than Victoria, and 21 members from Victoria itself. So here's some key dates to keep in mind. We met for the first time September 19th. Here we are in November. We will be issuing an interim report in December, which is really a summary of our proceedings. In January, MNP will be releasing its technical study report. We will be introducing that to the public in February at the next set of public meetings. And by April the 5th, we conclude with our 8th and final meeting when the members will announce their recommendation, and a final report, as I mentioned, will be delivered to both councils in June. Now, what are we doing during those 8 meetings? Well, this is how we are spending our time. We had an introductory session. We have had the chance to hear from CAOs and chief planners. We've had the chance to hear from historians, from municipal governance experts. We've had a chance to talk about what some of our values are. Those yellow dots, those indicate the public meetings that are taking place. And when we get together a week from Saturday, we'll have the chance to hear from a panel of folks representing different facets of the community. We're going to be considering the implications of amalgamation for the policing of both communities. And we'll be reviewing some public submissions that we have received as well. In the new year, we'll be considering the findings of the technical report. We will then be turning our discussion to identifying our priorities. And then we'll be hearing from additional local advocates, those who can talk to us about the economic implications of greater integration amalgamation. We'll be starting to zero in on our priorities. And in the final 2 meetings, we'll be hopefully coming to common ground on a final set of recommendations. So I'm moving very quickly just to cover off an overview of the process. Here's what it actually looks like. This is a meeting of the Citizens Assembly. We're at the Lansdowne campus of Camosun College. It's a great venue for us. And here is Jocelyn Jenkins, the CAO of Victoria, taking people through a briefing about how Victoria is governed and some of the issues and concerns that are alive for that community. You can find copies of Jocelyn and every other presenter's slides on the website, victoriasaanich.ca. Now, I know that a number of you are wondering, well, what happens next if the Assembly was to recommend amalgamation? Do they simply just get to decide and that's that? Not at all. The Assembly is but one step in a much longer process by which amalgamation might take place. So let me just walk you through a very quick diagram. And of course, none of this is to prejudge the outcome of the Assembly. As I have said all along, if the Assembly decides that the status quo should prevail, that is a success. If they should recommend opportunities for greater service integration, that is a success. And if they should recommend amalgamation, that is also a success. The success is working thoughtfully as representatives of a community to find common ground on a question which I know has been long-standing in the area. So as I mentioned, there was a plebiscite or a referendum. Both communities approved the Assembly. That led to a joint committee of both councils. They created the terms of reference for VISCA, which is the Victoria Saanich Citizens Assembly. Now, if they recommend no change, probably the issue stops there. If they recommend amalgamation, then both councils will receive that recommendation. The councils themselves have to vote to request of the province a referendum. Municipalities must conduct a public referendum before they amalgamate. And so the province would have to agree and would have to provide the funds that would allow that municipal referendum to take place. If both communities decided not to amalgamate, or if even one of the two communities voted no, then the issue would stop there. If, however, both communities voted at the time of the next municipal election to amalgamate, then there would be 4 years in which there would still be two councils, and those councils would be effectively transition councils. They would spend a lot of their time and energy working towards the next municipal election, which would be a unified municipal election, and which would only at that point lead to the dissolution of the two corporations and the creation of a new municipal entity. So as you can see, we are upstream in what remains a very lengthy process and one that affords significant opportunities for public and political input. Everything you need to know about this process and that I've said so far can be found at our website, on the resources page, on the FAQ page, or on the contact page if you haven't yet signed up to receive our regular mailings. So I've talked about what's happening over those 8 Saturdays. We have heard from both mayors. We have heard from the 3 CAOs, that is Victoria, Saanich, and the Capital Regional District. We have heard from both chief planners as well as a historian. We have heard from a municipal governance expert in BC, one from the University of Toronto in Ontario, as well as an Indigenous researcher. We have developed a draft set of values, which I'm going to share this evening, and 3 slides tonight that cover off some of the earliest reasons that you could make to either maintain the status quo, pursue deeper integration, or consider outright amalgamation. I'm going to take us through those very quickly now, then I'm going to turn to any questions, and mercifully, we'll be able to break out into some small groups and get the conversation going. So, not yet confirmed, the members have identified 8 values that they think are important to local governance. We're going to be posting all of these slides after tonight online so you can read them in greater detail. But the 8 values that the Assembly members have so far prioritized are the importance of good collaboration that leads to inclusive and flexible decision-making based on community needs. That local government should be effective. Effective is the second value, because they believe that effective local government should efficiently deliver high-quality public services through innovative and timely measures. The members also believe that sustainability should be an important value. And in their mind, sustainability means taking a holistic and regenerative approach to decision-making to improve the quality of life of current and future generations. The members also value fiscal responsibility, believing that it is the duty of local government to utilize community resources wisely and to provide the best value in services and infrastructure today and into the future. The members also believe that local government should ensure good representation, which means enabling grassroots participation and ensuring that residents have the opportunity to influence decisions being made at the community level and with other communities. They also believe that communication is really important because that's the basis for effective, accessible, and reciprocal relationships. They think that local government should be humane, that it contributes to the community's vibrancy by ensuring that people have their core needs met. Lastly, they've named accountability as a value because they believe that it's an overarching principle that should inform our ability to measure progress by local government and, of course, hold it accountable for the decisions that it's made. Those are the 8 values that the members have identified and that are intended to orient their deliberations. We asked the members, what are the best reasons that you can think of for either amalgamating, integrating more services, or remaining separate municipalities? Here are some of the answers that they have given us. 1, it would promote greater resiliency and sustainability. That is, amalgamated communities would have greater capacity to respond to the different economic, social, environmental, infrastructure, and planning challenges that they might face. It might produce more efficient government by streamlining policies, bylaws, and processes to reduce waste and duplication. It would mean that resources between the two communities were more equitably distributed. That is, they would more fairly share the services, finances, and responsibilities that ensure taxes and spending align with the real needs of their communities. That there would be more cohesive growth management because the communities would be planning together for the long term, land use, housing, transportation. All of these challenges could be addressed in a more cohesive way. Some members have suggested that by being larger, it would give them greater regional influence, either amongst their municipal peers or with the province. Some members have suggested, and this is certainly a topic that MMP is taking up, whether there could be cost savings and economies of scale that come from sharing the costs over the larger tax base. 7th, integrated communities could foster diversity, a sense of shared civic identity, and an ability to collaborate on different challenges. Lastly, greater capacity to pursue the larger infrastructure projects that both communities need and that a growing population will require. Now, this is not to say that the members think these are the right reasons. These are speculative reasons that they intend to consider when taking up the case of amalgamation. Why would you integrate? So again, not outright amalgamation, but simply look for opportunities to better align services. Some members have suggested that better integration of infrastructure, transportation, emergency services could lead to improved quality and efficiency. Some people think this could be favorable because it's more flexible. You could implement it more gradually at its own pace without all of the potential difficulty that could come with merging these corporations. Third, an improved fiscal position, efficiencies in contracting and grant management, sharing of debt, and reducing volatility by enhancing fiscal stability. Fourth, equitable and consistent services, fair distribution of costs, and a more consistent experience for residents, so that people in both communities would get more or less the same. Specialized expertise and collaboration. Well, some communities have certain competencies. They were to pool that expertise, both communities potentially could benefit. Practical and achievable. Well, integration is less of a lift than outright amalgamation, so it avoids some of the complexities and allows potentially the communities to avail themselves of more of the service opportunities provided by the Capital Regional District. Again, I'm reciting all of this without any prejudice to the merits of these arguments. They are unsettled in the minds of the Assembly members. These are just simply some of the initial rationale that they provided. Lastly, when we asked the members to consider some of the reasons why communities should stay the same, they suggested the status quo provides good local control and effective representation because it maintains local decision-making over the policies and fiscal decisions that people care about. That it preserves the distinct identity of the two communities. There's no disruption. There's no additional cost. That it's simple, it's stable, they feel it works. Another reason would be that the benefits of amalgamation or integration are not yet evident. So in the absence of a clear case of support, why pursue this any further? That you would retain your fiscal independence, that it would preserve the future option for both municipalities to avail themselves of different configurations, different choices that we might not yet be able to see. And lastly, any two organizations that need to find a common way of doing things raises the potential for organizational, cultural conflict and differences. We stay the same. We don't need to risk any of that. Again, not taking a position, and neither are the members on the merits or demerits of these arguments. They were simply thinking through what some of the reasons for the three options might entail. I hope you're sitting there thinking, I agree with some of that, or I disagree with some of that, or I can't believe they didn't mention the following things. Because when we go into small group discussions, you'll have a chance to name whatever's top of mind. Last two slides I have for you. What happens next? Well, we're going to be taking the notes from tonight's meeting. We're not attributing them to any speaker. We're going to summarize them, share them with all 42 members of the Assembly, or rather 48 members of the Assembly. You'll be able to make a submission and sign up on the website. And these are the dates again to remember. In a moment, we're going to move into those promised small groups. The Assembly members are not here with all the answers tonight. We are in listening mode. We want to hear from you. I'd like you, if you're not a member of the Assembly, to take a moment to introduce yourself, like the members of the Assembly to introduce themselves. And I'd like you to take up 5 questions tonight. The first, what are the most important issues that you think are going to affect the region over the next 25 years? Secondly, what do you think is important to consider when deciding whether or not Victoria and Saanich should amalgamate? What do you think are the potential benefits of amalgamation or deeper integration? What do you think are the potential disadvantages? And lastly, what advice would you like to give to us, the members of the Assembly, in the conduct of our work? That's everything I have to say to you. I want to just invite any questions about our process that you think are important to ask in this plenary format. So if you have a question you'd like to ask, stick it in the Q&A panel or wave at the screen, because I know people may not be able to find the buttons they need to communicate. We'll just give everyone a moment in case there are any questions that folks would like to ask. Okay. Not seeing any of them that are on the topic of deeper integration and amalgamation. I'm going to, the cost of the Citizens Assembly. Thank you, Catherine. No, I do appreciate that. That is absolutely a matter of public record. The cost, the total budget of the Citizens Assembly, including the technical report, which is a sizable portion of it, is $750,000. Details of that budget are part of the municipal proceedings of both council, and we're also happy to provide a plain language breakdown on the victoriasaanich.ca website. And if you have further questions about it, you would be very welcome to just send us an email. Here's the next question from Ingrid, a guest. Were members made aware of other jurisdictions that amalgamated and how much they saved? Well, here's the thing. In British Columbia, it has been almost a generation since there was a municipal amalgamation. We have heard from our most recent expert on municipal amalgamation how one of the most recent, but still going on a while, amalgamations was in the other end of the country, Halifax, Nova Scotia. The simple answer is that the literature on cost savings of amalgamated municipalities is mixed. It is not a straight line between saying if you amalgamate municipalities, you will save money. And that is why we're really looking forward to the MNP analysis, because it will give us a clear sense of whether there are cost savings and what the magnitude of those cost savings from amalgamation might be. Any other questions, particularly about the Citizens Assembly process? I'll give folks a moment more in case they want to type something in. I see a question here from John Weaver. Why does it take so long? Now, I'm wondering, John, whether you're talking about the Citizens Assembly or all of that cascading waterfall, right? I mean, look, one of the things we can all agree on is that governance moves slowly, and the opportunity for the community to weigh in, for provincial politicians to weigh in, for existing councillors to weigh in, it does take time. The timeline is not something that the Assembly has any control over. We are one piece of this more elaborate puzzle. I wanted to explain what those puzzle pieces look like and also make it clear that the Assembly's role is not to decide, it is to advise. and hopefully through its deliberations, it will make a compelling case for whatever it recommends. One of our members suggested that some of you may be having trouble figuring out how to ask a question. At the bottom of your Zoom window, there are a series of buttons marked audio, video, participants. If you click more, you should see a button that says Q&A. If that Q&A button, which looks like a speech bubble with a question mark inside it, is not already available. So giving it just a moment more. Ingrid has suggested it would be great to hear from Halifax and perhaps by extension other residents of municipalities where amalgamation has taken place. There was a spate of amalgamations in Quebec, in Ontario. One of the reasons why there have been fewer amalgamations in the last 15 or 20 years in BC has been, and people can have different opinions about this, I'm not setting one out myself, but has been the growth of the regional district model. We're going to provide some materials on the website, and future presentations will be made available. Some of those resources I hope are interesting to you, Ingrid, and other people who are attending tonight. All right, so with that, there's going to be about 2 or 3 minutes of rewiring that will happen. Your screen is going to flash. You're going to find yourself in a smaller group, and give it a minute or two as other people may find themselves added to your group. If your screen flashes and you find yourself by yourself, hang tight. Don't leave the room. Don't click any buttons. One of my team members is going to find you hanging out in the digital ether, and we will, in the space of a couple minutes, move you into a room with other people so the conversation can continue. Let me just say, on behalf of the Assembly, thank you very much for coming out tonight. I hope you have a good discussion, and please feel free to email us or reach out through the website if there's any way that we can be of assistance. All right, let's move to the small group discussions.